This is a little hot. Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. John, you ready to go?
I am, yes.
I had the volume turned up
yeah.
really loud in the headset here, but so after shocking John, he was looking a little sleepy in a post-lunch hour haze. So we had to get him, because it's all part of the broader plan that we've talked about to become much more emotive and exciting. So we'll get you fired up.
It's hard to get conservatives excited. I mean, it's especially those of us from colder climates. It takes a while for us to get moving.
Especially when the temperature is now soon to cross the 90-degree threshold.
Yeah.
So, well, that's good. Thanks for teasing that out, John, because we got a lot to cover today, and I think some of it is stuff that you get, let's just say, more animated than usual about.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, thanks for joining us, folks. Again, I've been trying to remember to do this on the front end, but if you are an audio listener, we are on YouTube. We have, if you're a video listener and you want to take us in the car, we're across all of the major audio platforms, so you can get us wherever you want. But make sure you like and subscribe to all that. And if you like the content, make sure you share it with your friends. So we're going to do a little bit of, let's call it housekeeping on sort of political matters around the state, John. It's summer. There isn't as much going on in the summer, generally speaking, but especially in an off year. But yet things are happening behind the scenes. And as we've talked about several times, there's a governor's race going on here. And that's going to cast a pretty big shadow across Iowa politics for the next almost year and a half. So anyway, we have had some of these, at least on the Republican side, gubernatorial candidates reach out to us. We've been talking to them, and that's great. Asking us what we think on different pieces of tax policy, and we're happy to talk to anybody and give support, ideas, whatever it is. So yesterday, you and I actually met with State Representative Eddie Andrews, had a nice visit with Representative Andrews, who is really leaning into property tax policy. So that was encouraging, and I told him straight up, we appreciate it. Anybody that's willing to use that kind of a platform and their voice to elevate the issue, because too often I think that Iowa taxpayers feel like they aren't being heard. Is that fair?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So anyway, anything to add to all of that?
No, we had a good discussion, and it's good to talk about those ideas.
They don't call him the best color man in the league for nothing. All right. You like that one? Yeah. Come on. Fired up. All right. I do have one other thing. And I hear some rumors and buzz and things heading on out there. There's a lot of the names that might be running for governor on the Republican side out there. I did hear, I think there may be one more higher profile entrant into the race that would have the ability to raise some money, but I'm not going to spoil it. But anyway, I will say this, but the reason I say that is this field is not set. And I strongly believe that. There's going to be some twists and turns on that throughout. I did note, too, and I think this is the Secretary of State Paul Pate announced that he's running for re-election. And that was, I think, an open question. If I'm not mistaken, Secretary of Ag Mike Naig has said, I think when he said he's not running for governor, that he planned to run for re-election. I don't know if that counts as an official announcement. But anyway, that was one I think people wondered whether Secretary Pate would run again, but he is. And a lot of folks don't know that Paul Pate is, I think, in most of the elections, been the top Republican vote getter, is that actually runs ahead of the rest of the tickets.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, no, he is. He performs very well on the ballot, and I don't know if that's. I don't know what to attribute it to. Maybe Secretary Pate, if you're a podcast listener, I don't know. I'd love to talk to you about that.
Yes,
What's the secret sauce? Because he's been able to do it for quite a while. So one other political thing is we talked quite a bit about the governor's veto of the eminent domain / carbon capture pipeline bill in the House. And reading a lot of different sources, but House Republic, well, I guess just the Iowa House in general has secured enough votes to call for a special session. And did I say that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And they needed 2/3, right? Okay. So but that was bipartisan, because if I read the article right, there were, I think, 70 on the letter to call for the special session.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, you actually read these articles. I just read the headlines because that's kind of how I roll. But is the goal to override the veto or to write a new bill?
My understanding was to override the veto.
Okay. Well,
but I could be wrong on that. I think from looking at that article anyways.
I joke. I did read the article in the Register, and I think that's it. And I didn't read the actual special session letter, but I know there have been some on social media that have talked in terms of writing the bill, or what would the governor, because she said in her veto letter that she'd be willing to look at other language or would next year. So, but it may all be a moot point, because as Senate Majority Leader Jack Whitver has issued a statement that there isn't the support to call for that, and you have to have 2/3 in both chambers to call that special session. So I suspect that, at least as it stands now, won't amount to anything coming up. Okay. Anything else on the elections, politics?
No, the only thing I would say is the negative ads are starting to heat up for the midterms because of the big, beautiful bill. And regardless of what side you're on that, I've seen radio or listened to radio ads and seen television ads, both for and against. And of course, the comment that Senator Ernst made has kind of created a strong push by those on the left.
You know what?
Which I think is being blown way out of proportion.
Well, it's not even, it's she's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Just factually correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I did see another bit in, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, John. I did see another bit in one of the national, I think it was in Punch Bowl News, one of the daily newsletter things, kind of insider stuff, that there is a growing buzz that she may not be running for re-election. We'll just see. Until we hear something official, we don't know, but that's out there. I think that's right on the messaging. I also, the Democrats have been talking about at the federal level that they have polling that shows that the one big beautiful bill doesn't poll very well, that's turned negative, which was supposed to be a positive, right? But I think on the flip side, the individual components of the bill, or at least many of them, poll really well, whether we like them or not.
Yeah.
The no tax on tips and overtime, that polls really well. We may not think it's great tax policy, but yet it does. And I think just the extension of the Trump tax cuts, and then depending on where you're at, the SALT things. So I think it may be because there's so much drama around Big Beautiful Bill, and you're going to see the ads on it. But if you are, for example, here in Central Iowa, if you are Congressman Nunn, there's plenty in there that you can campaign on as a win for taxpayers. Whatever it looks like today, once you kind of turn on the bright lights of a campaign and all the TV ads, I think that's going to be a positive. Tax cuts win.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I wish the administration would come out a little bit more stronger on their communication on defending why these tax cuts or renewing them is important. And also just, for some reason I wasn't invited to this event. I don't know why, but Farmers for Free Trade.
Oh, really?
Had an event in, I think, the Cedar Rapids area.
Well, I know your affinity for ag policy and free trade, so it would have been right in your wheelhouse, John.
But they were bashing tariffs and saying how awful they were. But and that's another issue where they need to do a better job of explaining, this why this policy is being pursued.
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, look, this administration does have a few things going on right now.
Yes, yeah.
First and foremost, at least immediately as we talk about this, whether or not we want to flip the switch on World War III.
Yeah.
And I joke because you and I are not on the same page on the whole
we had
getting involved in Iran. And I can argue it both ways, but that is obviously consuming a great deal of the attention of the administration, and rightfully so. That's something they should be focused on as they work on this. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to go back to that big, beautiful bill because they're using the Medicaid stuff as a scare tactic, and that concerns me because I think that's one of the reasons why the polls are reflecting that. Yeah. Is they're scaring people that people are going to be thrown off this program and they're not going to get the health care they need. They're not going to get. You're already seeing articles about people are going to go hungry this summer, and I just don't buy it.
I don't either.
It's a scare tactic.
It's the same thing we saw in the height of the Doge things and Elon Musk. Is that any time you talk about any sort of savings, any sort of reduction to federal or state entitlement programs, the left is going to scream. And it's not even just the left. There's some on the right that just, and it just showcases how incredibly difficult it is to do the right thing on these programs, because there is nobody that's talking about ending Medicaid. Now, there may be some talk about how to make it more cost effective, get the right people on, the right people, fine. But those should be grown-up conversations that we have about how to effectively administer entitlement programs. But we don't get to have that because as soon as there's any sort of discussion, the rhetoric just gets turned up to 11 and we're done.
Yeah,
so
I hope, right, yeah.
But I will say I think voters are wisening up to that because as we saw during the Doge thing, there was all the screaming and wailing, but yet people are like, yeah, we instinctively know that these programs are bloated, which again highlights the frustration that we still haven't seen a great deal of progress on securing those savings that were pointed out when the American people understand that their federal government is bloated, inefficient, and tries to do way too many things that are outside of, frankly, what government can and should do and can afford to do. So, yeah, here we are. Yeah. And I'm going to come back to that because I got a piece here.
Okay.
We're going to come back to that. Actually, we're going to transition to it right now, unless you really want to keep talking about federal entitlement programs.
No.
All right. Well, let's go.
Forward, yeah.
Okay, so we both saw this article today. Was it today, John? The Iowa City?
Yes. Yeah,
so the city of Iowa City wants to, and they don't have right now, one of the few Iowa communities that does not have a local option sales tax. I think the other larger community is Ankeny that doesn't. So you actually, if you really want to try and save money, do your shopping in Ankeny or Iowa City, at least for the time being. So Iowa City doesn't have one. They've tried to implement it in the past and it's failed. So they want to go back and ask for the 1 cent local option sales tax. Did I say that fairly?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Needless to say, things don't always work the same way in Iowa City they do in the rest of the state, but also sometimes, frighteningly, they do sort of work the same way. But they want to use. Did you read this? Did you pull this article out, John?
I read it this morning, but I didn't bring it with me.
So it has to go to the voters. And under Iowa law, if you establish a local option sales tax, 50% of that revenue has to go to property tax relief. More or ostensibly, right? I think those dollars become very fungible, but yet there they are. But this article said they want to spend, if I made my notes right, jump in when you're ready to go off. Remember, get excited.
Yeah.
That they want, of the remaining 50% of those dollars, that there would be 25% would go to affordable housing initiatives, 10% to infrastructure, and 15% to quote-unquote community partnerships. What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. It seems to be that the first thing my first reaction when I read this article is the other communities that have done this before, they all say 50% go into property tax relief.
But does it really?
It it doesn't make a difference.
No.
And so I think what this is just a way to generate more revenue for more government spending. And I think the other programs they're going to spend on there's already existing funding for those programs. Right. And I'm very suspicious anything that says community partnerships.
Community partnerships.
Knowing that it's probably going to be, climate change and who knows.
Basket weaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, now, just in case you were wondering about the city of Iowa City, did implement a new utility franchise fee this year and used reserve funds to fund the budget for this year. So they decided to presumably go upside down and implement a new utility franchise fee, but still need to find new dollars for community partnerships. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, there's a quote here. I can't skip this, John. I got to find this because it's so talking about this. So the left typically, or at least philosophically, doesn't really like sales taxes. They think they're regressive.
Yes, that's
right.
Yeah.
They prefer other tax types. Where is this? Shoot. Anyway, so one of the I guess city council people said that they acknowledge that it's regressive, but there's so much money available, they just got to go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
So we have a philosophy of how taxation should work, but we need the cash to give away to our friends, we're just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, we're just going to take it.
So we can dispense with the idea that this is all some noble endeavor to get things done the right way, and really is just a race to the trough. Okay, I want to talk about this though, because I want your take on it, John. Affordable housing. And we hear this over and over across Iowa. And it's not just in blue communities like Iowa City, but this drive to build and fund, incentivize affordable housing projects. And for me, it's a red flag. Where does this come from? Why do these communities feel this need to use taxpayer money to offer incentives to build more affordable housing in their community? And frankly, what does even affordable housing mean?
That's a good question. I think this is I would look at this from two perspectives. The first is that this is similar to the push for economic development, and they're both related. So basically, there's they can get subsidies for this, money from the state and federal government to do this, and it benefits these developers who want it, so they can put up housing, and so that benefits. And then there's also the other belief that we're in an era, and it kind of goes back to FDR and LBJ and how every time they declared national emergencies on everything. So, Johnson declared war on poverty. And, a few years ago, everyone was talking about mental health. We had a mental health crisis, and that's what everyone was talking about. Now it's housing. And so I think there's a lot of times what policymakers do, and you see this everywhere, is that they get on a bandwagon on a certain issue, and right now it's housing. And regardless if you're in Iowa or whatever state, everyone is saying we got to throw money at housing and subsidize it, and because it's an emergency. And I think there's a problem when you start talking about public policy in terms of these emergencies, because then, who's the only one that can respond to that emergency? Government.
Yeah, well, all of them are an effort to have government engineer our economy, which is opposite to what conservatives ought to believe about the way government works. In my mind, there's two distinct issues at play. There's workforce housing, which is an issue in Iowa, in many communities where there simply isn't enough housing stock for at the price point that people want to work in a certain place. That's real. I think affordable housing is, in my understanding and the way I understand, is lower income.
Mm-hmm.
So and maybe there's gray area overlap between those things, but this is affordable housing comes alongside, Section 42 housing projects where the federal government is already incentivizing the developer, in some cases paying for almost all of a project. You see these pop up all over the place. And now, so the question that I still can't figure out is why we have all of these federal incentives for affordable or lower income housing, and communities still want to get in that business as well. So all this federal money, that's plenty. We've seen them all over the place. But yet, I was reading articles just today as I was thinking about this. The city of Waukee, good grief. There is no shortage of housing being built in the city of Waukee. I don't know. It's a race between Waukee and Ankeny, who's the fastest growing city in Iowa, I believe. And yet we want to continue to use tax dollars to incentivize a certain kind of housing development instead of letting the market decide.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why, if these resources are so scarce, as the folks from Iowa City have said, or we've seen local governments complain all over Iowa, if those resources are that scarce and they're being squeezed that much, why are they coming over the top to pad the profit margin of developers who are already being incentivized by the federal government?
And I think too, it's community A is doing it, so we got to do it. And so there's this pot of money there, and everyone wants a slice of it, and it benefits these developers, and it benefits the cities, because then they can say they're doing something. As far as I'm concerned, it's not necessarily improving the cost of housing. And also the other problem is I think sometimes trying to think how to say this so I don't offend anybody, but I think there's a correlation between the massive influx of immigration we had and with this issue.
Look, that's going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
But look, it's basic economics. It's supply and demand. More people chasing a scarce resource, the price will go up. It just will.
Yeah.
And
there's some companies out there that know that, the federal government, and there's all these housing programs, and so you can don't have to pay wages as high because they're going to get subsidized housing and other type of benefits, which has an impact.
My point for any concerned Iowa taxpayer out there who is looking at what their community is spending, which we all should do. We keep preaching this. And you see incentives going for affordable housing projects. The alarm bells should go off, and you should be emailing or calling your city officials or county or whoever and saying, hey, why are we doing this? Who's asking for this?
That this Iowa City thing is sort of, and we use the analogy, it reminds me of the Titanic, because half of that's going to property tax relief, and these local governments continue to increase their spending. It's just like the Titanic trying to turn on their bilge pumps.
Yeah.
The ship's going down.
I'm here for John Henderson Titanic analogies. They always work.
And that's what it is. I mean, it's not helping anything.
Right.
It's not going to reduce the property tax burden, because if you don't, you cannot continue to spend if you're not going to address your spending.
Right.
No. Or you cannot. It just doesn't work that way.
No.
With they're trying to have it both ways, of trying to generate property tax relief, but then they want to continue spending and even spending more.
And these are the kinds of things when we tell you is that not every dollar that's spent at the local level goes to a critical, indispensable core government service that can only be provided through government action. Here you go. This is what we're talking about, and they're going to raise taxes to try and pay for it. But it's Iowa City. That's what we get. But anyway, I can't imagine there's anybody in Waukee or Ankeny or wherever that's a current resident that is like, man, I got my house. I sure hope we can spend some of my tax dollars to build to incentivize a developer to build affordable housing. I don't. There's a disconnect there that I seriously and authentically don't understand.
There's also a belief and a debate we can have about the housing issue where, in a sense, just like economic development, you build it and they will come. And so there's an argument there. If we start having this, whether it's low-income housing or workforce housing, that will help solve Iowa's workforce problems if we start having more of this availability. I'm not quite sure if that's going to solve the issue.
Here's something I am quite sure of. In fact, it's a core conviction of mine. There is no better way in the history of the world to efficiently distribute a scarce resource than free market capitalism. Full stop. Yeah, Government gets in the mix. It is inherently less efficient.
Yeah.
It will do a poorer job of distributing that, call that housing resource or that tax dollar. It is inherently inefficient. It will not do as good a job as if you simply let the economy run its course.
Yep. You're absolutely right. I mean, just look what they did to higher ed. I mean, with all the student loans, I mean, it's just driven the cost up. And
going on to the workforce housing thing, I get it. It's an obstacle to some economic growth that there isn't that available. Understood. But it's still not government getting in that and providing tax dollars to pay for it is still not the most economically advantageous way to get to the result.
Yes. Yep.
It just isn't. So, whatever. Which is what the city of Iowa City said about their philosophical misgivings about the raising the sales tax. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how. Yeah. Okay. All right. John, I told you we'd talk about this, and we're going to come back around to the newly minted or legislated Center for Civics Education inside the regions. And you brought this up the other day, but I'm just going to let you take this from the top on what's going on with this center and what did you find in the news?
Yeah. So Iowa State, I believe, has one, and of course, UNI has a Center for Civic Education, and the legislature just passed the Intellectual Freedom Center at the University of Iowa, right, which will be created. But this has to do with the University of Northern Iowa and their Center for Civic Education, and so they brought in a new director, and the concern I have is that to me, it seems like the background is very left-wing in terms of philosophy, and I question whether or not what is the objective of this. And we know that predominantly faculty within most colleges and universities are very progressive, and my fear is that these type of programs, well, maybe good in nature, is having a director that's possibly biased to the left in the best interest. Is there going to be conservative views on there, or Well,
I think the goal was that we'd have some viewpoint diversity, or getting back to basics with the civic education, and trying to get away from the unanimity of thought inside of our higher education that is not only just left of center, but radically left of center. But here we find that as we establish these things, we're just getting more cultural indoctrination.
Yeah.
And I don't blame the regents for this. This is far deeper than any of that, because that's what faculty is in higher education.
Yes, yeah.
And I think hopefully this is a cautionary tale to the legislature, which to their credit has been willing to wade into these issues.
Yeah.
We've been very clear that we appreciate that. However, they're going to have to be very careful and very prescriptive about what these things look like, or you're just going to get more of the same. You're just dressing it up and putting a happy, shiny face on, name on it, when you're getting someone who has spent their career in academia chasing progressive policy projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for example, the background of this person, I think, is the political science and women's studies.
Yeah, in the writings are all on gender, and then there was some other, nominally nonpartisan sorts of initiatives like this, but you look just underneath the hood a little bit, and it's all tied in with all of the same leftist nonsense.
Yeah, it reminds me of what they call action civics.
Yeah,
and so where they almost encourage activism and
right,
and in terms, instead of learning about the principles of the Constitution and having a debate over things of the founding. And
you know what, John, I know I'm a simple man. Can we just ask everyone to watch Schoolhouse Rock?
Yeah.
Is that an option? Is that that's where I got my civics education?
Yeah.
That's where I learned about legislation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can hear the critics out there laughing right now. It's like, yeah, and you haven't learned much else since then. But I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
These aren't complicated things.
Yeah.
And when we talk, especially about civic education, it's just the basics.
That's right.
And look, maybe this center can do it, and maybe she has because of her background can set forth what those basics are. It's probably a little unfair to prejudge that, but you know what? It's your background is a predictor. So we're just looking for the basics. We're looking for free and fair platform. It's viewpoint, a fair place to exchange ideas, which are too often higher education simply is not. And I don't need to tell you that. We just want a level playing field and to teach the basics.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be hard.
No.
And I think that's what the legislature is trying to get to.
Yeah.
Is just some fairness.
And I should have wrote the name down, but Arizona State as a civics education institute, and it's run by, I believe, Professor Donald Critchlow, who's good. I mean, he's fair, and he's one of his volumes is right behind you.
Well, of course it is.
Yeah. So it might be two of his volumes up there. But
well, what we really want to watch, and I know you really want to watch, is what's going to happen with the institute. Is it an institute at Iowa? And that's forthcoming for intellectual freedom. I think that's really the one. That we're interested in, and love for you to be a part of that in whatever role that would be. But that's the one that just recently was signed into law by the governor. So very early days on what that would look like. But I'm optimistic on that particular one for sure, and that will yield results.
Because we need more diversity of ideas on campus, because it's such a left-wing bias. And no one. I was just looking at here is a report that I pulled just before we started, and just in terms of now this is K through 12, but state civics requirements for high school, and Iowa has a very vague requirement. Students are required to take half a year course in government or civics, but they are not required to take an assessment. Now that has been changed, because their assessment now is passing the citizenship test with a 60% margin.
Right. Yeah,
so,
we went over that. You passed.
Yes.
If you didn't catch that episode, we quizzed John.
I hopefully got 60%.
I think you did actually miss one of them, but I can't remember.
Yeah. But so we have a very weak requirement, and you were talking about Schoolhouse Rock, but I mean, they at least provided some basics in that, and it was a very patriotic. And I remember, growing up, some of the old Warner Brothers cartoons used to be very patriotic as well, and you could learn some history from that way. But the problem is what I'm trying to say is this stuff is not being taught. We've been talking a lot about federalism here, and most people don't even know what federalism is, why that's important. And so, this is why we need to strengthen civic education, and both at the K through 12 and at the higher education level, because, it's we just don't want good workers, but we want good citizens as well.
I'm going to read this, John, because you sort of touched on it, and I love going back to this when we talk about some of these things. And I don't know if you can read the monitor from over. It's President Reagan's farewell address as he is leaving office, and later on into this, and I'm just going to read for a while, but an informed patriotism is what we want. Are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents in the long history of the world? Those of us who are over 35 years 35 or so years of age, grew up in a different America. We were taught very directly what it means to be American, and we absorbed almost in the air a love of country and appreciation of its institutions. If you didn't get those things from your family, you got them from the neighborhood and the father down the street who fought in Korea or the family who lost someone at Anzio. You could get a sense of patriotism from school, and if all else fails, you could get a sense of patriotism from the popular culture. The movie celebrated democratic values and implicitly reinforced the idea that America was special. TV was like that through the mid-'60s. But now we're about to enter the 90s, and some things have changed. And he goes on to lament some of these things, about how special America is. And so we've got to teach history based not on what's in fashion, but what's important. Why the Pilgrims came here, who Jimmy Doolittle was, and what those 30 seconds over Tokyo meant. 4 years ago on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, he read a letter of a young woman who, writing to her father, had fought on Omaha Beach, and on and on and on. And that's a little bit more, I get that that's a little bit more on the patriotic front, but the idea is that we're losing these basics. And I thought about this from the Schoolhouse Rock. That was a little kid me on Saturday mornings in the popular culture that, sandwiched in between Thundar the Barbarian and the Jetsons or whatever else was on. Yeah. I got Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah. And somebody out there, tell me why I'm wrong, because I can't remember what came on after Thundar the Barbarian, but I'm pretty sure that was on NBC and Schoolhouse Rock was often on ABC. So I screwed the whole thing up with no better pop cultural references, but it's still, my point stands.
Yes.
That it was out there. And we're losing it because we're so focused on these other things that we got to get back to the real basics and the ability to talk about those things and exchange those ideas. So anyway, and mostly I just don't like passing up opportunities to talk about Reagan or his farewell address.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite Reagan speech, and I just think that probably is the most timely warning a president could give in a farewell address because he was spot on, and I think at one time, that was bipartisan.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that should not be, none of that should be controversial.
Talk about the world I grew up. I mean, growing up in small town Iowa with World War II vets around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember one day I went golfing and I got, if there's not enough, you can go out by yourself and golf, but I got matched up with a couple old guys from, so I was in high school or college, I can't remember. And they paired me up with a couple of these old guys, and they were probably late 60s. I can't remember, 70s. And I got them going for about 9 holes, just telling war stories.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And the one guy had a bullet hole in his bag. He's like, oh, look at this, showing me. And it was great. And that was that was not, I grew up with a grandfather who was a World War II vet, who was a FDR Democrat.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. You had those American principles, the things that mattered.
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about here, is getting back to that.
My grandparents were very patriotic too, and they took us to parades. And I remember the first political event I went to is my grandma took me to the DFL booth at the Minnesota State Fair, and I got a Paul Tsongas pin.
Yeah, a whole lot of learning went on that day, John.
Yep. That's beautiful. And then she did take me to the Republican booth too. But no,
it's great.
And then you mentioned cartoons, and it reminded me of one that I watched, and it was an older one, but we used to watch, my brother and I, we'd watch the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
And there was one with Porky Pig, and he was not wanting to read his history book, and he threw it to the side, and so he fell asleep under a tree, and then Porky starts dreaming, and Uncle Sam comes and teaches him why history is important. And it was just a great cartoon, very patriotic, and
beautiful.
And at the end, Porky is very, very proud to be an American.
Good.
Yeah.
You ever read any of the Alice the Elephant books?
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah.
I've got a signed copy. I'll bring it in.
Yes, yeah.
No, well, I'll definitely do that. So anyway. All right. I think it's about time to wrap things up, because we could probably talk about Reagan and cartoons all day, and that's not why people tuned in. Well, they might have tuned in for some Reagan, but I'm pretty sure they didn't tune in for cartoons.
Yeah.
So
I do have 2 more things.
I didn't even ask you. When I talk about John Henderson ready to go, he didn't even wait. He just takes a shot whenever he can.
So I wanted to do a federalism update.
Okay.
And this will just be quick. And so this is courtesy of our colleague, our senior tax fellow, Tom Sands, who shared with me that just the federal funds update for anybody who's interested. So the most recent data available for fiscal year 24, Iowa received just a little over $13 billion from the federal government.
That's gone up a lot in the last few years.
And last year, or fiscal year 23, it was $11.7 billion. The high water mark was fiscal year 21, which is a little over $14 billion. But
that's rescue plan,
yes,
that's COVID stimulus,
And way back in 2010, we only received $8.3 billion. So almost basically, it's getting close to doubling here. Of money now, from the federal government.
If you're a curious taxpayer out there, because those are your tax dollars. We talk about federal money, but they're your tax dollars. Well, what is all that for? Right? That's a great question. For those of you out there listening and think, well, what is all that money for? It would be great to know.
Yes. Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would be great to know what sort of strings are attached with all of those funds, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Boy, we got a policy proposal for those folks, don't we?
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk about that again sometime in the summer. Yes. I've teased it out, but the whole idea of a federal funds inventory. Mm-hmm. What is this money? Where does it come from? And what is being held over our heads to accept it?
Yeah.
Right? Very good.
And I have another trivia question.
Good. Trivia time.
We had a winner from last week.
Yes.
2 winners, actually.
Okay.
Representative Gustav.
Yes, of course.
And then we had one of our original listeners.
Oh, okay.
Emailed us.
Oh, good.
And it was my mom.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Mama Hendrickson got that good.
So she emailed in, and I didn't know that either.
There was somebody in the YouTube comments.
Oh, okay.
That got it as well.
Oh, wow. All right.
So we actually had three, but I didn't even click through because at least initially I couldn't tell who it was if it was linked to an actual name or not.
Okay.
But
so we had three winners then.
Do you have a new one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Let's get it, and then we'll wrap things up.
So here it is, folks.
We need a jingle.
Yes.
For trivia time.
Yeah.
Like.
This business will get out of control. It'll get out of control, and we'll be lucky to live through it.
I mean, I don't know. But I only got a few things in on the sound pads here, so we could do.
Oh, that's awesome.
You wanted to use that one?
Yes. Yeah.
That okay.
From Washington.
Okay, so that's from Washington. It's trivia with John Hendrickson.
Hastily prepared.
Yeah. All right. What do you got, John?
Yeah. So. Here's the quote. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which the last power of taxation will for the most part be connected. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. Who said this, and what document is it from?
Okay, you heard it. So, all right, listeners, do your thing. Impress John. We're looking for some brilliance out there. All right, well, that's all the time we got for today. We actually have more time, but I'm out of things to say, so we'll just say that we're out of time. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.